everybody, I'm Bill Sanders, and this is Watch Art Sci, the art and science of watch collection. Today we're going to be talking about the watches of Thomas Ninchritz. This is a German company that it has an unusual history so much as it's a little awkward because the Thomas Ninchritz started his watchmaking career while it was still part of East Germany before the reunification of Germany, and then went on to start his company. Now, the interesting thing about this company, two things. There's two different movements that Ninchritz uses, and they're both Unitas 6497 and 6498. We'll talk about those in a second. The prices of his watches are quite good. They start at 2,600 pounds and go to about 6,600 pounds. Those are in stainless steel, and gold are, of course, a good deal more. All right, so let's take a look at this company, and I want to start off with looking at these two movements. Now, the two movements are the ETA 6497 and the 6498. Now, actually, they're both Unitas movements that were taken over by ETA some years ago, and they were used primarily for pocket watches. And so you have a pocket watch movement in a wristwatch. By the way, it's my wristwatch I have on today. See if I can get it in the light right. Anyway, it's not cooperating too much. Anyhow, so we have these two different movements, and the difference between the movements is just one thing, and that is that the ETA 6497 has the subdial, the second subdial, at 9 o'clock, and the ETA 6498-1 has it at 6 o'clock. This is for the small seconds. That's it. Yeah, there ain't no more. Those are and all of his watches are based on these two movements, and they're both mechanical wind-up movements. And they have a 2.5 hertz speed, which is very slow. But you may remember in another video we talked about all of the really top watchmakers having this slower vibrations per hour, VPH. And so these two movements have that, and I like it a lot. Plus, it's a pretty good sized movement because it went into pocket watches. All right, so let's take a look at these. Now here once Ninchritz gets finished with them, they look a lot like a Longenson. They're highly decorated, a lot of engraving. They have this, it looks like what I'll call circular Geneva waves on them. And by the way, too, they're not in Glashütte, they're not in Dresden, they're in Nuremberg. And Nuremberg does have a history of watchmaking if you go back and you look at it. Glashütte has most of the watches, but Nuremberg does have a tradition of watchmaking. Okay, so here again, you have these two different dials. And like I said, the only difference is the position of the subdial. All right, let's take a look now at what is going on here. If we take a look at pocket watches, there are more than two basic kind, but the two that we're interested in, we just call the pocket watch and the hunter style. The pocket watch has the crown at the top, and the opposite is the second subdial. The hunter style also has the subdial at 6 o'clock, but the crown is at 3 o'clock. And so if you flip it upwards, so the crown's at the top, the subdial's over at 3 o'clock. Now, the watches we're going to be looking at all have their subdials over on 9 o'clock, but it's the same thing. They just flip them on the other side of the watch. Okay, going on, if we take a look at these two watches. First of all, there's the one on the left is called the Philip, and it uses the 6497-1, and there's the subdial, the seconds, small seconds at 9 o'clock. And then the other is the Fliegerwatch, their pilot's watch, and the subdial there is at 6 o'clock. Now, most of the watches we're going to be looking at have the subdial at 6 o'clock. He does a lot of different things with them, and everything, all of the decorations on the movements are by hand. All of the engraving, all of the everything is done by hand. So it's really very interesting. It's sort of like like I mentioned, A. Lange & Son, where you have all of that beautiful engraving. Also like Lang and Hain, where they also have engraving on the balance cock and other places on it. So this is sort of a cool little company. All right, the first one that I want to look at is called the Meteorite, and it has a dial made out of a piece of meteorite, and it comes from the meteorite it's called the Motian Lusta, which was, I guess, landed in Sweden back in 1906, and they were able to get enough of it to make these very thinly sliced. Now what they have, the TN for Thomas Ninchritz 200 is the Unitas ETA 6497. One of the things you'll find, if there's no center, there are no center seconds, and there are no second subdials at all on this watch, and where that happens, the 6497 instead of 6498 is used. All right. Now here is one with a couple different styles to them. One has the Arabic numbers and the other has Roman. This is called the Grand Seconde. And this watch just has the big second at the bottom. It has Breguet style hands. It has Guilloche in the center. And one has sort of a goldish tint to it, and the other one is stainless steel. Actually, the goldish one is really a combination of gold and stainless steel. That's one of the things that Ninchritz has, is that all of his prices are listed. That's another thing that you have. They're in stainless steel, gold and stainless steel, and then all gold. This one right here with the Arabic numbers is a combination. This next two, Black and Diamonds and Cathedrals, I put them together to show the contrast between a very sort of modern Movado almost kind of look in the Black and Diamonds, and then Cathedral, which has a very traditional look. And I like them both. I really like the Cathedral a lot. The Cathedral has the 98, and we know that because it has the small seconds at the bottom, and the Black and Diamonds has 6497 because it has no sub-seconds at all. All right. Now this one is one I really like. This is on my wish list. Okay. So Regulator. I don't have a Regulator. And what a regulator is that each of its hands are on a separate subdial or main dial. Now here you have the seconds or the big dial, and at the subdial at the top of the hours, the subdial at the bottom is small seconds. And this has the Unitas 6498. Again, like I said, subdial at the bottom, we know it's a 6498. And again, you can see how it's been decorated, and again, everything is by hand. This last one is really a very interesting piece. It's called the Vice Versa. We can tell where the crown is. Those are simply two different styles. My goodness, it looks like a gold base to the one on the right. I thought that he had done somebody else had done that. It was Beauvais. That's why what I was thinking. No, these are two different styles of the same watch called the Vice Versa. Okay, well, one of the reasons that I wanted to talk about Thomas Ninchritz is because a couple of times ago I talked about misrepresentation of a watch's movement. Now, the thing I like about Ninchritz, he doesn't make any bones about it. If you go to their German site, they have not only every single movement that they use, in parentheses it'll say basis, and it'll have Unitas 90, 94, 68, or 67. All right. The work is all handwork, and it comes in the stratosphere of, we'll say, affordable. And so when you look at the beveling on the back, and you look at all of the decorations, and you look at the engraving on the balance caulk and everything else that goes with it, one of the reasons that that one watch critic said that that's important, if they take good care of that, there's a good chance that they're taking care of everything else in the watch. So this is one that I'm very interested in. And I think it represents sort of, we can say, yeah, that's standard horology. They don't make their own movements. But it's sort of high horology within standard horology. And I think it's a very, very interesting watch company. Thomas Ninchritz is getting up there. He's 70 years old. And so starting at his, he didn't just start, but I mean he was a little bit older by the time the world settled down, so he could do a lot of the things that he wanted to do. And I wouldn't be surprised if he came out with his own movement. All right, well, let's really like to get your opinion of this. Here we have a affordable, really nicely engraved watch. We know what's in it. We also know that with a slower beats per second, that we are going to have some finer tuning elsewhere in the watch, and that's what I expect from that. Well, anyway, like I said, love to hear what you think of this, and also, too, this is an invitation to subscribe if you like. So until Sunday, when we have our next collection review, this is Bill Sanders for Watch Art Sci, the art and science of watch collection.